To my students. Right now, I would like to introduce you to microeconomics, which is the first half of our syllabus of economics. My name is Dr. Ian Ndlovu. I'm going to be taking you for microeconomics CBA 1105. Basically, what we are going to be looking at in this set of slides is the overview of the economy. Economics is a science, and this course is in a way a science course. Science is the branch of human inquiry that is characterized by the systematic process of observation, hypothesis formation, testing, and revision. We are specifically a social science. That is, we apply the scientific method to social phenomena. The laboratory of an economist is society, especially the economic or commercial aspects of society. Economics is the branch of scientific inquiry that attempts to understand how economic systems make decisions in the face of scarcity. Or in other words, how does society allocate and distribute scarce resources? There are some micro and macro questions that we grapple with in economics. The individual or micro questions can be stated as follows. What will happen in the labor market if the minimum wage were to be raised or is increased? How does the tax system affect the decision making of households? And then the macro questions can be as follows. Why is the economy growing at the present rate? When we reflect on the national budget for 2020, overlapping to 2021, which was presented by Professor Mtuli Ncube on the 26th of November, we realized that the economy actually declined for 2020, and the key economic sectors are also expected to decline. So we may ask the question, why did the economy decline in 2020? I know we can proffer so many reasons. The other question that we can ask is, why is the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, rising at the present rate? And why are some countries so rich while other countries are so poor? How can government affect economic growth in the long run? And can government effectively stabilize economic activity in the short run? In Zimbabwe, we've got the Transitional Stabilization Program, which was presented by the Minister of Finance some time ago. How has this program fared when it comes to stabilizing the macroeconomy? We use the economic method to better understand the questions that I raised in the previous slide pertaining to resource allocation at a micro and at a macro level, at micro and micro levels. This consists of observing macroeconomic behavior and then building economic models that help us to better understand the behavior of economic agents. Economic models are graphical and or mathematical statements or representations of social and economic phenomena that we observe that is around us. They are much simpler than the real world and are thus imperfect or easy to understand. I know any person who picks an economics textbook, and attempts to understand the subject matter of economics, they may think that economic models are very complex when they look at the mathematical aspects of those economic models. But the truth of the matter is that reality is actually far more complex and far more dynamic compared to the economic models or the mathematical representations that omit so many variables that we see where economic phenomena is actually taking place. Examples of the most common economic models are the model of supply and demand, or the theory of supply and demand, and also the production possibilities model, or curve theory. The ultimate purpose of economics as a science is to develop an understanding of human systems or of finite resource allocation. Economics is about, for example, attempting to understand how best we can preserve our physical environment while making use of our resources and designing better, governmental spending and tax systems. So that's what economics is concerned about. But economics is concerned about a lot of things, even the behavior of firms in the private sector, as well as the behavior of multilateral organizations and agencies. Economics is the study of how people use scarce resources in an attempt to satisfy their unlimited wants. Resources are inputs used to produce goods and services. They are also called factors of production. Use of resources is also called resource allocation or simply resource utilization. The second term, resource utilization, is not frequently used in economics. In economics, we frequently use, or more often than not, we use the term resource allocation to refer to how resources are manipulated to produce goods and services in an economy. The basic economic problem is that of scarcity. That's the primary motivation for starting economics as a discipline. What is this scarcity? Scarcity is the limitedness of resources vis-a-vis unlimited human needs and wants to be satisfied by those resources. Resources are also called factors of production, and we know that there are four basic factors of production, which are land, labor, capital, and enterprise. Land basically refers to the ground and the natural resources which are associated with the ground, such as crude oil, water, and minerals. Labor refers to the skilled and unskilled labor, or skilled and unskilled effort, human effort, which is meant for the production of goods and services. There is the quantity and the quality dimension of labor resources. When we say labor is skilled, we will be focusing on the quality of the labor and also the amount and the quality of the work done. When we are studying labor economics, it is customary practice to express labor in terms of man hours that are contributed to a firm or to a production process. Capital refers to final goods that are produced so as to facilitate further production. So those final goods are actually produced so that they can work as inputs to facilitate further production. Such final goods include machines, equipment, buildings. The fishing nets of fishermen are also regarded as capital, as well as the taxi or the combi, the minibus, which is used by a small-scale businessman in the transport business, is also regarded as capital. Entrepreneurship, this is a factor of production which basically coordinates other factors of production, the three basic factors of production, which are land, labor, and capital. It coordinates them by organization and also by the taking of risks. So an entrepreneur is an organizer and a risk taker, if we may put it that way. The rewards for the four basic factors of production are that land is paid rent, labor is paid wages or salaries, and capital is associated with interest, also called the rental price of capital or the marginal efficiency of capital or the marginal efficiency of investment. And an entrepreneur gets rewarded with a profit. Since resources are not adequate to satisfy all desired uses, there is scarcity, which is the core problem that we study in economics. Scarcity, it refers to the imbalance between our desires and available resources. The economic problem of scarcity affects all of us, and it forces or compels all of us to make economic choices. The most cited example in economics, in basic economics textbooks, is the example of the choice between producing non-civilian goods represented by guns and civilian goods which are represented by salt or porridge or butter, whatever the case may be. Every time scarce resources are used in one way, we must give up the opportunity to use them in other ways. To produce more weapons, for instance, the economy must sacrifice the opportunity cost of producing more civilian goods due to scarcity. The sacrificed or foregone civilian goods represent the opportunity cost of producing more weapons. The opportunity cost of producing more of good X, a hypothetical good, is the most desired goods or services foregone in a bid to transfer resources to the production of this commodity X. The limit on resources implies limits to total output that can be produced. This means that if the production of good X is increased, then the production of good Y must by necessity or by definition be reduced, as the resources are transferred from the production of good Y to the production of good X. All output combinations on the production possibilities curve, on the curve itself, they show us attainable levels of output, and they also depict efficiency. Although some commodity combinations may not be desirable. What is this efficiency? Efficiency refers to the maximum output that is produced from available resources. And by available resources, we are referring to a bundle of resources that is used by an economy or a firm in a production process. In economics, a production possibilities function, also called a production possibilities curve, PPC, or a production possibilities boundary, PPB, or a product transformation curve, PTC, it compares the production rates of two commodities, two hypothetical or even real-life commodities that use the same fixed total of the factors of production for comparison purposes. So the graphically bounding the production set is this PPC, which is the outermost part of the feasible production region, which means under this curve we've got what we can call the feasible production set, all sorts of points of output combinations that can be produced of two goods. So a period of time can be specified, is normally specified, as well as the state of technology for the PPC to be drawn. A well-behaved or a normal PPC normally bulges outward or is concave from the origin or to the origin, but can also be representing as bulging downwards or linear, which is a straight line PPC, depending on a number of factors or a number of scenarios. A PPF can be used to represent a number of economic concepts, such as scarcity of resources or marginal rate of transformation, productive efficiency, allocative efficiency, and economies of scale. So it can be used as a tool for many kinds of situations. This slide shows us the PPC, which is depicting the production of guns and barter. Guns representing non-civilian goods and barter representing civilian goods. So if we look at this PPC, we realize that the opportunity cost of producing guns in terms of barter the opportunity cost of producing guns in terms of barter or barter in terms of guns actually increases from left to right. Because if we calculate the slope between points A and B, which is the marginal rate of transformation, the name of the slope of the PPC, between those 2 points A and B, the slope is our dy dx is -5 divided by +10, which gives us -half. And then this slope actually increases because between points C and D, the slope is -50 divided by +10, which gives us -5. If we ignore the sign of the slope, which is caused by the fact that the PPC is downward sloping, and we concentrate on the modulus of our result, we realize that the slope increases from half to 5 as we move from left to right, which shows us that along the PPC, as we move from left to right, there is increasing opportunity cost. This may show us that as more non-civilian goods are foregone, the economy as a system becomes increasingly reluctant to forego an extra unit of guns to gain an extra unit or to gain certain units of barter, which are civilian goods. To put it in a generic way, the more a particular commodity is sacrificed to produce another commodity, the less reluctant the economy as a system will be to yield increasing amounts of the already scarcer commodity, or the commodity which is already being produced in small quantities. The economy will be reluctant to forego that commodity whose production will be asymptotically approaching the origin or asymptotically approaching zero. There is opportunity cost at many levels, but for the purposes of this course, we will explore opportunity cost at 4 levels, which are the individual level, the firm level, the national level, and the international level. At an individual level, the opportunity cost of attending an economics course, an economics lecture, is an episode of Peppa Pig on Jim Jam channel of DSTV foregone. The opportunity cost of being a student at NAST is being an MSU student foregone, or the opportunity cost of being a student at NAST is being a Harvard University student foregone, or an Oxford University student foregone. At firm level, the opportunity cost of acquiring computers, new computers, maybe Apple Macintosh computers, Apple computers for secretaries, is the buying of a very nice car for the sales executive foregone. The opportunity cost of training specialist technicians in Italy or Germany is it's 5 Prados or Pajeros for directors foregone. And then opportunity cost at the national level, The opportunity cost of building a dam at Escotine may be the acquisition of 25 Lexus Jeeps for Minister's Falcon. The opportunity cost of constructing a faculty building at NAST is the acquisition of defense equipment from China Falcon. We may also have a straight line PPC which portrays or demonstrates constant opportunity cost. As we can see, between points A and B, the opportunity cost, which is our MRT, is minus 25 divided by plus 10, which gives us an MRT of minus 2.5. Similarly, the opportunity cost between points C and D towards the end of the straight line PPC, it is minus 25 divided by plus 10, which gives us again minus 2.5. Clearly, we see that opportunity cost is constant. But we know that under normal circumstances, opportunity cost is not constant. It's always changing. To show either increasing opportunity cost, increased scarcity or reduced scarcity. We can also think in terms of an inverted or a convex PPC, which illustrates decreasing opportunity cost. In this scenario, if you look at your opportunity cost between points A and B, you realize that the MRT or the opportunity cost is initially minus 50 divided by plus 10, which gives us minus 5 as our MRT or as our index of opportunity cost. And then towards the end there, between point C and D, the opportunity cost is minus 5 divided by plus 10, which gives us minus half. So we can see when we consider the modulus of the answer or the result in terms of our MRTs, that the slope actually declines from 5, an MRT of 5 to an MRT of half, which implies decreasing opportunity cost, maybe due to economies of scale, scale economies or economies of scale, dynamic economies of scale as the economy improves. What may cause shifts in the PPC, especially outward shifts? It may be increased resource supply, economic growth, and an improvement in the state of technology. In contrast, if there is an adverse change to any of the above factors or any of the shift factors, the PPC will shift inwards. This slide number 23, it actually shows us the outward shift of the PPC, maybe because of economic growth or because of new resources that have been discovered in the economy. A PPC can also pivot inwards if productivity for producing a certain good reduces, or if the state of technology which is associated with the production of a certain commodity declines. In the slide, we can see that the PPC is pivoting from PPC-B to PPC-A. It's declining from PPC-B to PPC-A. In any given economy, scarcity activates three fundamental questions. In other words, because of scarcity, all economies must answer three fundamental questions, which are A, what to produce and in what quantities. B, how to produce what is to be produced. C, for whom to produce that which is to be produced. The response of an economy to the three fundamental questions that are activated or triggered by scarcity gives rise to an economic system or an allocative mechanism. And basically on Earth or throughout the world, we have got four basic economic systems or allocative mechanisms. which are the traditional economy, the free market economy, the command economy, and the mixed economy. We'll start with the traditional economy. This is an economy which is shaped by tradition, the work that people do, the goods and services that they produce, and how they utilize and exchange resources, all follow long-established patterns or traditions. The standard of living in such an economy is largely static over many years, maybe over many decades and centuries in some instances, and economic behaviors are very easy to predict. In many traditional economies, community interests take precedence over the individual interests, over the individual. Individuals may be expected to combine their efforts and share equally in the process of their labor for the sustenance of a particular community. Traditional societies can be found in Australia and other parts of Brazil, and they include the Australian Aboriginal communities as well as some isolated tribes in Papua New Guinea and in the Amazon jungle. During the Middle Ages, the feudal agricultural villages in Europe, they followed the traditional economy model of production. In a command economy, which is also called a centrally planned economy, the government controls the levers of economic activity. The state decides how to use and distribute resources. The government regulates all price signals, which includes the prices of commodities, wages, profits, interest, as well as other price signals like fees and fares and so on. It may even determine what sort of work individuals must do. Socialism is a type of command economy, command economic system. Historically, the government has assumed varying degrees of control over the economy in socialist countries. In some instances, only major industries have been subjected to government management in some countries or in some instances. But in other instances, the government is heavily involved in basically all the sectors of the economy. The classic, which is a failed example of a command economic system, which started in 1919 and collapsed in 1989, is the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, which is normally truncated or abbreviated as the Soviet Union. The collapse of the communist bloc in the late 1980s led to the demise of many command economies around the world, especially in developing countries. But there is an enduring example of a command economy in the Caribbean region in the shape of Cuba, which continues to hold on to its planned economy model even up to this day. In a market economy, in market economies, decision making is decentralized. It's left to individuals. The unfettered interaction of individuals and companies in the marketplace determines how resources are allocated and goods are distributed. Individuals choose how to invest their personal resources, what training to pursue, and what jobs to take, what goods and services to produce, and individuals decide on what to consume. Within a pure market economy, the government is entirely absent from economic activities. This doesn't exist in the real world. Obviously, this is just a hypothetical situation. But the economies which are actually near the pure market economy model, we have got economies such as Japan, Taiwan, Singapore, and some economies in Western Europe, such as Switzerland, Luxembourg, Belgium, Norway, Denmark, and so on. A mixed economy combines elements of the market and the command economy. Many economic decisions are made in the market by individuals, but the government also plays a pivotal role in the allocation and distribution of resources. The United States today, like most advanced nations or economies such as Sweden, Norway, Finland, Russia, is a mixed economy. I left it to us as an exercise in intellectual reasoning that we designed whether Zimbabwe is a traditional economy, a pure market, a pure free market economy, or a mixed economy. It's up to us to decide, or whether it's a command economy. The all-pervasive question for mixed economies is what is the right mix of private and public sector enterprises that should exist in an economy for an economy to qualify to be called a mixed economy. And then we examine efficiency. There are three types of efficiency, namely productive efficiency, allocative or distributive efficiency, as well as economic efficiency. These types of efficiency are best illustrated by the production possibilities curve or the production possibilities branch, which I covered in our earlier slides. All the points on the PPC have all forms of efficiency, even though they may not all be desirable. We realize that productive efficiency is a necessary condition for economic efficiency, and allocative efficiency or distributive efficiency is a sufficient condition for economic efficiency. In turn, productive efficiency and allocative efficiency, they each have necessary and sufficient conditions. We will examine productive efficiency. Productive efficiency occurs when the economy is utilizing all of its resources efficiently. The concept is illustrated on a PPC where all the points on the curve are points of maximum productive efficiency. In other words, no more output can be achieved from the given bundle of resources or from the given inputs. An equilibrium may be productively efficient without being allocatively efficient, because as I said, productive efficiency is a necessary condition for economic efficiency, but it is not a sufficient condition. So you can have productive efficiency when welfare is not maximized, when some of the costs are externalized to society and actually welfare is reduced. There are two main conditions for productive efficiency, as I said at the onset when I was introducing the three types of efficiency. The first condition for productive efficiency is X efficiency. All firms in the economy must operate on their relevant cost curves. This is called X efficiency. X efficiency is a concept that was originally applied to the study of management efficiencies by an economist or a management specialist or scholar called Harvey Liebenstein in the 1960s. All firms in an industry must minimize the cost of production. That is, a typical firm must use the smallest or least bundle of resources, which may be our labor and capital, to produce the maximum possible level of output. X efficiency can also be illustrated diagrammatically, as we can see on slide number 35, where the lowest possible ATC is actually, by implication, the X efficient cost curve, or the cost curve which contains points of X efficiency. By implication, the actual ATC is actually inefficient. It's X inefficient throughout all of its points. X efficiency can also be illustrated by points X and X prime. At points X and X prime, we can readily see that the firm is actually operating above the given average total cost curve. Thus, to produce a given quantity of output Q1, instead of this firm incurring ATC1, level of costs, it is incurring a TCX level of costs. It is maximizing costs instead of actually reducing or trying to minimize costs. In the same vein, to produce Q2 level of output, instead of this firm actually minimizing costs by incurring a TC2, the firm is actually incurring a TCX, which demonstrates that on this plane X prime, the firm is actually X inefficient. And then the second condition for productive efficiency is cost minimization. Having attained the lowest possible ATC, the firm must move in experimenting with the different price and output combinations, or cost and output combinations, or average cost and output combinations. It must play or manipulate those average cost and output combinations until it attains the output and cost combination which minimizes average total cost. And obviously this occurs in the market structure of perfect competition. In the long run, equilibrium of a perfectly competitive industry, the market price, the number of firms in the industry, and each firm's scale of production adjusts to such an extent that each firm produces at the lowest point on its long run average total cost, which is at its minimum point, which represents minimum efficient scale. At this production scale, the following multivariable equilibrium obtains, which is price will be equal to the average revenue, which is our horizontal demand curve, which is coincidentally equal to marginal revenue, which will be equal to our marginal cost, which is equal to our long run marginal cost, which is equal to our average cost, which is equal to, in turn, to our long run average cost. So these equalities, they give us 6 specific conditions for the long run equilibrium. Number 1, we have got economic efficiency, which is represented by price being equal to marginal cost. We have got profit maximization at 0 economic profits, because marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost, implying that marginal revenue minus marginal cost, which is our marginal profit, is equal to 0. So the addition to profits, which is our marginal revenue minus marginal cost, is equal to 0 at profit maximization, which means at the long run, when we attain the long run of a perfectly competitive firm, we have got 0 economic profits. And then we have got a perfect competition prevailing, because we have got a coincidence of the price, marginal revenue, as well as average revenue. And then we have got break-even output, which is attained because price is equal to average revenue, which in turn is equal to average total cost, or the long run average cost curve. We have got minimum production cost, since we have got marginal cost being equal to average total cost. And then we have got minimum efficient scale, which has been attained in this industry, since marginal cost is equal to ATC, which is equal to long run average cost, and which is equal to the long run marginal cost as well. And then in monopoly, we see that since there is a sole supply of a unique and essential product, a monopoly is technically inefficient both in the short run and in the long run. This is caused by the fact that there is a divergence between the marginal revenue curve and the average revenue curve. Since the monopoly firm has got market power, and the existence of market power, or the association of the monopoly with market power, since it is a sole supply of a unique and essential product, implies that the demand curve has to be downward sloping. And the moment the demand curve is downward sloping, the marginal revenue curve will also be downward sloping, but it will be having twice the slope of the average revenue or the demand curve. So the long run equilibrium, as we can see, it occurs at a point where average costs are still declining. At the point where Q1 and ATC1, we get to that point where the ATC is still falling. The ATC attains its minimum point where the marginal cost coming from below cuts the average total cost curve, which is to the right of the equilibrium point. As we can see at the point of equilibrium, we can see that the average total cost is lower than the price. And since the average total cost is lower than the price, it means this firm is able to realize supernormal profits. And then allocative efficiency is a type of economic efficiency in which the economy or producers within an economy produce only those types of goods and services that are more desirable in society and also in high demand. It is a point where marginal benefit is equal to marginal cost, or marginal social benefit is equal to marginal social cost. And there is no dead weight loss in such an economy. A free market economy under perfect competition without market failure generally is held to be allocatively efficient. So allocative efficiency is a condition achieved when resources are allocated in a way that allows the maximum possible net benefit for their use to economic agents that are found in a particular economy. When an efficient allocation of resources has been attained, it is impossible to increase the well-being of any one person without harming another person. At the point of allocative efficiency, marginal benefit equals marginal cost, implying that both consumer surplus and producer surplus are equal to zero, which is depicted on this slide number 43. Allocative efficiency occurs at the equilibrium point, where consumer surplus, represented by the neon green shading, is maximized, and also producer surplus, represented by the royal blue shading, is also maximized. Allocative efficiency is obtained if price is equal to marginal cost, and this takes place in perfect competition. As we saw in the diagrams illustrating the allocative and productive efficiency of monopoly, price is greater than marginal cost or greater than average total cost as well, implying that the producer of supply is tapping some of consumer surplus by a magnitude which is P minus MC, since MC is smaller than the prevailing market price. In essence, the producer sells the good at a price which is greater than the average cost of producing that good, including the opportunity cost of resources of availing the good in the market. And this enables the monopolist to realize supernormal profits. Economic efficiency is also known as economy-wide efficiency. All opportunity costs must be minimized to attain economy-wide state of efficiency and economy-wide state of efficiency that combines allocative, productive, and distributive efficiency. Hence, there are two major conditions for economic efficiency. First, the economy must attain, or agents in an economy involved in production must attain productive efficiency, which is a necessary condition. And then second, there must be allocative or distributive efficiency in that economy, which means your price must be equal to your marginal cost of availing output in the market. Economic efficiency is realizable or can be realized under the following conditions. When MC is equal to MR, marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. And these two are in turn equal to ATC at a minimum point, which is the point of technical efficiency of perfect competition in the long run. Price is equal to marginal cost, which means there is allocative efficiency, which can only be realized in perfect competition. Again, we can only have economic efficiency when marginal cost of firm A is equal to marginal cost of firm B equals marginal cost of firm C equals marginal cost of firm D, which can be expressed in terms of those marginal costs with the superscripts. Finally, economic efficiency occurs at the tangents of the production possibilities curve and the community indifference curves. The community indifference curves are used as an index or as tools for measuring the welfare of the community. This implies that the marginal rate of transformation must be equal to the marginal rate of substitution, which is the slope of the community indifference curve. At the point of tangents of the two curves, one curve, the CIC, is convex and the PPC, the normal PPC, is concave, where they are touching each other or they've got a tangent. It means the MRT, the slope of the PPC, is equal to MRT, the slope of MRS, the slope of the community indifference curve. And then there's terminology which is used when making propositions in economics. Some of this terminology, it includes some Latin phrases like the post hoc equo propter hoc fallacy, which means after this, therefore because of this. We encounter this at high levels of cognition or reasoning in economics when models are actually formulated. It's normally truncated as the post hoc fallacy, though the full name is post hoc equo propter hoc fallacy. It's also called the fallacy of false causation or coincidental correlation or correlation which is not causation fallacy. And then per se, it's a statement that you'll encounter a lot when you study economics. It means if something exists per se, for instance, it exists by itself regardless of external factors. And then the other term which is used, especially when doing quite a bit of mathematics or quantitative methods in economics, is the quod erat demonstrandum, which is QED, which some people mistakenly say it means quite easily done, but that's not what it actually means. It means what was required has been proved. This Latin abbreviation is normally put at the end of mathematical theorems when proofs have been adduced or when a proof has been demonstrated. And then we've got also holas polas, which means all at once. The government was opposed to selling land holas polas to foreigners for obvious reasons, because the government has to ensure the control of the domestic economy by domestic residents. A priori is a term which is very, very important in the formulation of hypotheses in economics as well as models. It means from the former causes. If you think something, or if you think of something a priori, you are conceiving it before seeing the facts. In other words, you are presupposing. And then there is a related term which is a posteriori, which means relating to or denoting reasoning or knowledge that proceeds from observations or experiences to the deduction of probable causes. In a nutshell, a posteriori reasoning proceeds from just general experiences, from where we distill through inductive logic or through inductive reasoning some general principles. In other words, it begins with observed facts and phenomena out there, and then we infer underlying relationships as well as causes in that phenomenon. We come up with a model after observing phenomenon, which is the opposite of a priori reasoning, where we start with a hypothetical position and then we approach reality with that hypothetical position. Ad infinitum, it means to infinite. It refers to something that goes on forever. Ad valorem, it's a term which is normally associated with taxation or some charges that are associated with certain services or things in an economy. This expression is used when something is related to the value of an object or transaction, like an ad valorem tax, which is proportional or proportionate to the value of a product. Vice versa means the other way around. And then in economics, we've got normative and positive statements. A normative statement is a claim or an assertion which is based on personal opinion, beliefs, values, and philosophies. For instance, someone might say more girls ought to be admitted to NAST to redress past imbalances. It's a normative statement which shows their opinion. Someone might say parents must stop abusing their children. Again, it's a prescriptive or a normative statement. The third example is that a command economy should change to a market economy. In most cases, when we are looking at normative statements, they've got prescriptive words such as ought, must, should, has to, some prescriptive words which appear to be prescribing or suggesting a certain behavior. But there are other normative statements which are not easy to discern, like the fourth one, Barcelona FC is better than Real Madrid. We are not given the parameters that make for the betterness or the better performance of Barcelona FC vis-a-vis Real Madrid. It's just an opinion which is expressed, most probably by the fan or a supporter of Barcelona FC. A positive statement is a claim or an assertion which is based on facts or attempts to be based on facts or data which can be gathered empirically from where the phenomena occurs. For instance, one may make the following assertion or statement: if interest rates go up, to the level of investment goes down. In other words, there is an inverse relationship between interest rates and the level of investment in an economy. That claim can be tested against whatever is taking place in the economy. There is an inverse relationship between the inflation rate and unemployment in an economy. And then number three, dollarization of the multi-currency system is the best remedy for hyperinflation. It's debatable, but someone can make that assertion, and then we can look for case studies to test the veracity of that statement. Food prices are a major driver of inflation in any given economy. That allegation or statement can also be made as well. So thank you so much for listening in to this presentation of slides for the first topic, the overview of the economy. I believe the presentation has been helpful. In my next presentation, I'll be looking at the market, what constitutes the market, constructing the model of the market, concepts of optimization as well as equilibrium, the demand side, the supply side of the market, the market equilibrium, comparative statistics, the impact of taxes and subsidies within the market model. So thank you so much for listening in. I believe this has been helpful.